Welcome to the People's Revolution podcast. This is a space where we share stories from activists around the world. We hope that these stories inspire you to act locally as we share globally. I don't have a problem with you. This generation, look around, there's nothing left to do. Liberation, take one final step and then you'll see the complications. The system don't belong to you or me. Welcome to the People's Revolution podcast. We're going to start, as always, with a land acknowledgement. A recognition that we are on stolen land is not enough when the genocide we call history still continues today and is reinforced by the daily lives of those unaware. Residential schools only closed their last doors in 1997, but the mentality of the residential schools lives on. White people, imagine living in a place that not only normalizes genocide, but actively covers it up. We don't live here because a peaceful treaty was signed. We live here because white people before us brutally pushed their way in. This includes our current government, RCMP, and church, and we need to acknowledge this and the harmful systems it brought with it before we could even attempt to create reconciliation. It is a privilege to not know that you are living in such a way that makes the genocidal reality look like regular everyday life. I would like to recognize that the stolen land I'm speaking from is rightfully the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, and was forced to be the home of Treaty 7. These nations are Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani. In these spaces, the Siksika people lived and practiced their oral traditions as far back as existence goes. Treaty 7 was signed on September 22, 1877 in a brutally unethical way. This treaty was not upheld. Treaty 7 includes the Tsuut'ina Nations, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nations of Region 3. So this space, known as Calgary, is rightfully known as Mohkinstsis. So today on the podcast, we have Mattie, who is the singer from Vibes, a Posicore band from Edmonton, Alberta.
Hi there.
With lyrics about political injustice, harm reduction, and positive personal growth. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming. So I think where we want to start off is 2 days ago, your new album came out, Baseball Bat to the World's End.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We've been working on it for a couple of years, so we're stoked that it's finally out there, you know. Baseball Bat to the World's End, that's a reference to two spots in Edmonton and the end of the world, which is like kind of like a cliff that used to be some kind of bridge that overlooks the river valley, and then there is a big baseball bat monument on 118th Ave. And so those are just two spots really familiar to us growing up in Edmonton, and the title pays tribute to that. And then there's a lot of local Alberta themes planted throughout the album.
Yeah. So the first thing I checked out before the album was the video for Champion Blood, and that was filmed in Edmonton with the help of, you had like a list of places and people that helped you out. So it sounds like it was really like a community project.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sonic, who's a local hip hop artist who's really well known in Edmonton, making beats and videos and kind of helping push the Edmonton hip hop agenda. He did that video for us, which we really, really appreciated. And Tyson from the Starlight Room let us film on the roof. And that's a venue that's like super important to Edmonton. All of the kind of big-ish like metal and punk and shows happen there. And so to get up on the roof and to do that was very sick. Aviary is a local all ages venue that let us film in there, and then also is kind of the primary spot that Vibes has been playing recently, so that we can make our shows accessible to as many people as possible. And so collaboratively, those three individual like Edmonton institutions really made that video possible. So we are really, really grateful to them.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And you guys had to rebook your release show. That was at the Buckingham, but now it's on March 19th because of course, COVID.
Yeah.
So better to be safe than
Absolutely.
have COVID.
Absolutely. And so hopefully March 19th at Buckingham, things are in a better place, because obviously we want that show to be as safe as possible. But the type of band that we are, the type of music that we are, it just doesn't really work with people sitting at the tables. It's something that we got to share and be able to kind of get up and bring it in for that to work properly. But obviously, that's not always the best idea. We got like a killer virus like on the loose, so we want to make sure that everybody's safe. But as you say, the album is out for people to enjoy in the meantime, and we'll all be together as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on your Bandcamp. And so I wanted to ask you what inspiration led you to creating this album?
Uh, well, Vibes has had this material for a couple of years. We've been working on it, and really, the inspiration was that we just wanted to put our full attention and creative force behind this. Like, recording has always been this sort of secondary ambition for us, and we like playing shows a lot more, and then didn't really put as much time into the recording, and then maybe the results speak to that. So we just said this time we're really going to focus, we're going to spend the money, we're going to really work hard on this, write the best songs we can possibly write, think a lot about the lyrics, think a lot about the melodies, think a lot about what it is as a whole, and try to put out something that really represents like where we're at as musicians and creators, and try to have something that's really speaks to what we could do instead of just kind of banging it off. So hopefully, and because also primarily Vibes is about the message, and putting that in as best a package as we possibly could, hopefully is the Trojan horse we need to kind of get the message out there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I really liked like It Only Takes Once.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how you released it as a fundraiser for someone who we interviewed on the podcast an episode or two ago, Street Cats in Calgary. So that's really cool also. And I've never actually heard a song about naloxone before, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, I've been I'm a social worker for the last 15 years, and the realities of harm reduction are never too far from my mind. And I really wanted to have a song that was approached it in a really constructive way, not talking about it abstractly, but like really specifically where you can get it, that it's the fact that it's all of our responsibilities, at some point when we live in an opioid crisis, it's affecting more people than ever. It's affecting lots of people in the punk community. And then also, all walks of life. It's not exclusive to any one group or socioeconomic class or anything like that. It's everywhere. And after a while, you can't say, it's their problem or it's somebody else should be doing this. It's like, we all got to educate ourselves and what role we can have in ending that stigma, but then also just being prepared to act. If somebody is OD, like having the skills to act and save a life, like that's political, but it's also practical. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's also a lot of miseducation about how to use it, and needing a fresh kit, is also very important. So we were able to kind of get the factoids in there because that's really what we wanted to do. Like have a hard hitting song, but then have a message, but then also like a very practical step-by-step message. Like this is where you go. This is what you got to do. Anybody can go into Shoppers Drug Mart and got one for free. So I encourage you all to do that and do that once a year. So it's fresh. And then should you ever be put in that position, you'll have the power to save a life and obviously get somebody to the hospital. Like doesn't just end there. You got to make sure that they get immediate medical attention. But arming yourself to do so is the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually recently got a nasal naloxone kit, and if it freezes, it won't expire.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And then they're not as easy to come by, right? Or
They're
they have,
not.
yeah,
I had to seek it out. Um, but there are some groups in Calgary, and I assume some groups in Edmonton are doing the same.
yeah. I signed up for a training for that coming up here. So I haven't actually held one of those in my hand yet, but that's what I hear that it's better. And obviously, I mean, like I can't, not nobody wants to give somebody a needle. Like that is kind of one of the big barriers to the harm reduction training is that it's like, to stick potentially a stranger with a needle. It's not the first thing you think to do. So if there's a less obtrusive way of doing it, I'm sure it'll go like a long way to making that accessible to the general public.
Yeah, I
And
hope that it continues to become more accessible.
yeah, and that single, since you brought it up, is still available. Vibes, Street Cats YYC at bandcamp.com. That single is up there. Any money you donate there, you get the single. Plus, all of it goes directly to Street Cats YYC. Every Bandcamp Friday, when there's no fees on it, we'll keep posting that, and just that's not going away. That's going to be just open and available for people to purchase and keep supporting that cause. And our music is available on Spotify and all those other platforms. But if you want to pay for it, I encourage you to just even pick up that single. If you want to throw $1 in the cap, that is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Street Cats is where I got my nasal naloxone. So if you're in Calgary and
Yeah,
you need some,
they're
contact
doing
them.
fantastic work, and the sort of grassroots nature, the working with the punk scene and everything makes it like a really potent ally for Vibes. I thought that was a great connection, and I'm so happy that we're able to help in a concrete kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah,
And so your other themes in this album, they're vast, but they all go together. Like a lot of positive mental health, radical self change,
yeah,
and then also some critiques on society, which I really like too.
yeah, absolutely. I think, like I was saying, like the lyrics were really important to this, and we spent a lot of time working on them. Like in my laboratory here, I had all the lyrics up on the wall and really meticulously went over them, made all kinds of changes and updates, and trying to make the language like get across exactly what I wanted it to say and speak to exactly the type of message I wanted to put out there. And that was a long process of just really honing like each line. And I would like to think it turned out really good.
Yeah, no, I did. And you have some features as well. John Kennedy, Jeremy Townsend. I think. I'm going to say their name wrong.
Yeah, Katrina Broadhecker.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and all amazing. And yeah, I actually liked Twist in the Wind with Katrina a lot.
Yeah,
And it hit a couple different points within like experiencing houselessness and then having trauma and having people judge you. I thought that was
yeah,
really deep and important for us, especially in Alberta, to hear that kind of message.
yeah. What I thank you so much for bringing that up. And it is specifically both uh, just showing the varieties of systems and paths that might lead somebody to be in that position, and how they are very there's a real variety. And I think that some people may have a tendency to assume that all people that are in that type of housing related struggles all have a similar backstory, or all part of one group, or all have one path that led them to that. But of course, that's not true. It's a real variety, and unfortunately, mental health and different sort of economic backgrounds, or physical health, or trauma, but more often, three or more of those things working concurrently leads somebody to chronic homelessness. And we wanted to try to get that across, because that is an important kind of correction on that thinking, I guess I would say. But then also within the punk scene, there is a prevalent classism, and then a lot of people who maybe haven't experienced that firsthand or come from the suburbs, as we mentioned, and then as I do myself. So that's a reflection for not only a critique on the punk scene, but then a critique on my own privilege and how I can only sort of like understand that to a certain extent. So we wanted to have not just the blame going out, but also to take a look internally on how our own privilege plays into like our view on the world, challenging our own thinking. So I think that is a complex message for like a punk song, but it is important. And that's why it was nice to have Katrina on there, because we had a lot of content to deliver in a short thing. And then her experience thrown on top of that to kind of tie it all together was really validating. And working with her on that was such a privilege for us. And really, she brought the heat for real. So
Yeah,
I
it's
encourage.
definitely a powerful song.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it's nice because we got that vocal delivery where everybody in Vibes could participate vocally, you know? So I write the lyrics, but then we all contribute to delivering them. So it's not just me spitting the whole time. There's like everybody has their own vocal strengths, which is cool, I think.
Very cool. And a couple other songs on this album were mental health, were like mindset, challenging your perceptions. But then also you had Bro Him Part 2, which hit some really soft spots, I think,
Yeah.
that are very hard to talk about, but I think also very prevalent in the punk scene, but also very tied into mental health.
Yeah. Well, and then that's our song just about kind of our fallen friends and family members, you know, and more, like you said, well, it's not exclusive to the punk scene. We all have our time on this earth, you know, and it'll come to an end. How you deal with that and how we mourn and what that grief looks like, it's hard to condense into a punk song. And I haven't heard it too many times. Bro Him, that we sort of tongue in cheek, Bro Him Part 2, because that song in a way is so iconic for capturing like a tribute, a memorial kind of thing. And so we wanted to tie ourselves to that legacy because they did it so well. Our song, which is a tribute to more specifically my friend Dave Finkelman, and then also my mentor and co-worker Lena Hempel, who both in their own ways showed me what a life well lived looked like, you know, and the type of energy and passion that they brought to their life was so inspiring. And then to have it kind of cut short so tragically, it still does seem so unfair. And it sort of challenges maybe this sort of weird artificial structure you might put onto life. Like if somebody exudes certain qualities, maybe they're going to be free from the realities of life, which it's not true. Like we all just have our time. We don't know how long it is, but it is the responsibility of the friends of those fallen people to live our lives in such a way that it honors them and carries their passions forward, like what they believe in, and carries it forward and we'll never be able to fill that gap. But if we live in a way that honors our friends, I think that we can feel better about their passing, take some kind of positivity out of it, and then also like really concretely honors their memory. And so that was a challenging message to get across, but I thought it was a really positive way to think about it and a way to honor my friends that have fallen. And then also more and more since we wrote it, you know, we're given pause as other people pass away. And it's so many things in this Vibes album is not me saying this is the way I always am, or this is my perfect mental health or perfect way of approaching the world, but it's like a reminder to me, during those challenging times, that it's like, this is the standard that I want to try to set, and these are the things I want to work on, and this is, when I get to something hard, this is the message that I want to remind myself of later,
Mm-hmm.
And Brohim Part 2 is big time, fits in that category, because that's very challenging to remember that, because it's obviously very hurtful, and very painful, but it is also part of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I noticed that kind of theme, not just in your lyrics, in Baseball Bats to the World's End, but also in Aggressively Positive. There was a lot of mental health messaging that dealt with more difficult things to talk about, but encouraging people to get through things in a way that brought in personal experiences, but also brought in personal responsibility,
Yeah,
but wasn't like deterring. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of like one of the big things that's positive hardcore and then positive mindset advocates, let's say, have to contend with is that toxic positivity is a real thing, and we certainly at no point do we assume that you can just smile your way through your problems. Like, that's not the message. And I think that there is something really naive and just like a motivational poster kind of outlook on life, And so that's like one of the big hurdles that we have to get through. And getting this message across is that it doesn't just stop at something like a good positive quote, it's not all you need. We uh, obviously acknowledge that life is full of struggles, and I understand that, not and that I understand where everybody's coming from, because nobody does. But in my own personal life, there's barriers to going after your day. There's barriers to trying to better yourself. There's barriers to living a life where you have mental health issues. But you don't improve your life by not fighting for a better life. Like, we all have our own challenges, and we all have our own work to do on bettering ourselves. And that you have to be mindful of it. It doesn't just happen. You have to really go for it and work on yourself. And that looks different for everybody, but that challenge does exist for everybody, And maybe when you're first getting into punk and heavy music and stuff, it's more fun to just like be filled with the angst and like kind of be like in that, and that catharsis is healing in its own way. I totally dig that. But just coming from elder statesmen of the punk scene, I've done that, but also I think that there is positive work that we got to do as well. So I'm kind of bringing both sides of it into it, but not pretending that the flip side of the coin isn't there as well.
Yeah, yeah, I could really hear that balance. And I'm gonna jump forward to your Aggressively Positive album. Then we can go back to all the other stuff on your Bandcamp. Um,
Absolutely,
but it
absolutely.
it took you 2 years to write Aggressively Positive. So,
Oh no, the new one, we kind of wrote it over 2 years.
oh, okay.
Baseball Bat to the World's End. Uh, yeah, aggressive positivity. I don't know exactly how long it took. It would have been, that was our first collection of songs that we did as a group, uh, and a couple of them we are still playing. But the messaging in it, I still feel is probably, I would stand by most of it. I would say, Well, I don't want to also chain myself to it, because I really think, like, someone like Ian MacKay, and he talks about, oh, I stand by like everything I wrote at 15. That kind of trips me out, because I think people do change and their ideas change, and making a song, getting your message out, having that chance to stand on your soapbox and say something is a huge privilege. I don't forget that. That's why I try to make my songs potent with something meaningful, because I want to take that opportunity to get out there. But people grow and change, and I'm not a perfect person. So that there is an evolution within vibes and the messaging and everything.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you.
So um, what I personally liked from this album, violence noncompliance I thought was interesting. Violence as a response to hate speech is, I think, an important topic because it's definitely it's a split
Yeah,
in how people think it should be handled. And so I really liked that you even addressed it.
absolutely. I got to shout out Jordan, our guitar player, who did actually write the lyrics for that one. But it is a good one, and challenging toxic masculinity, and especially, it was a good message to get out there, now, but then also then because we weren't hearing as much, it was still out there, but not the way it is now. I'm so happy to see the way, I'm not saying this right, but toxic masculinity is something that was just so unchallenged throughout like a lot of our lives and vibes. And growing up, as white cis males, a lot of that toxicity went unchallenged, but also unrecognized. But once you start to see it, you start to see how your life could be so much more improved by addressing those things because they don't serve to make people happier. It's like very confusing and archaic, and like, violence is not any type of solution for those everyday problems, and sort of being able to call that out, yeah, is a powerful message in hardcore, maybe it doesn't get talked about enough for sure.
Yeah. I like so many of them, but
Cool.
I've got like a little note beside each song about why I
That's
like them.
wicked.
But Break the Cycle. I liked that one extra. I liked how it both talked about what society expects of you, but then also what you lose when you join the race in society. And I really liked that message because a lot of people, I think, lose their passion
Yeah.
because you get burnt out. And then what do you want to do? Do you want to take a nap or do you want to do something for you, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. These are deep cuts. I love this. We haven't played that song in a long time, but it's definitely one I always really loved playing. And the message is important because you're right. You got to kind of take things at your own pace, and uh, there's no point of kind of comparing yourself to other people because that we only just see like a sliver of what that actually looks like for them. And everybody kind of has their limits. Nobody just has endless stamina to put into your passions. But I really think people have a lot to offer the world, and especially in Alberta where our our scene, our resources are finite in terms of like culture, arts, putting on shows, being in bands, starting radio stations, any of that stuff in the scene, like very little of it is, I don't know, funded by this like some type of conglomerate that has the power to like put arts in our place or our faces. No, most of it is sort of DIY to some extent, And the longer you spend in the scene, you see like, oh, this festival, I know the guys that are putting that together, or this art show, oh, I know the ladies that are responsible for putting that, or he did this, or they did that, or it's just like this collaboration of all these different artistic and passionate people that make everything that's happening happen. And but you got to take breaks. Like you got to be good for yourself. Self-care is important. Just because something didn't work out doesn't mean you should give up, because it really feels that way sometimes. But I really think people have a lot to give and a lot to offer the world, but they need to do that in a way that's healthy. Uh, in Edmonton, I've run a production company for many years, since 2008, and at times the way that it operated, it was unhealthy for me. Like I took on so much, did so many shows, and it felt like saying no was a betrayal of that. It's like, oh, I have to operate at such a speed to kind of validate something inside myself. I don't know exactly what that would be, but it felt that way, and it was unhealthy. I really thought that the positivity of kind of putting that out canceled out the fact that it was unhealthy for me, but it doesn't. And being able to take a step back is really, really healthy, and people are understanding that more and more. And I think I was late to the party in understanding that, but I'm keeping on working on that. So try not to take on too much is important too, because the stuff that you do is important, but you are important too. So you got to look after your own energy.
Yeah, I was also late to that party, but I'm also working on my boundaries. I'm a no person now, and if I don't know, I'm a maybe person.
Yeah. Well, and we got to try to be at our best. If you take on every little thing, then maybe you won't be. Yeah, no is powerful. No is positive. Hanging on to your energy, making sure your energy serves you and serves the world in a good way. That's very positive. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I loved how you finished this album off, a parting gift. And it is not a song, but it's you
Yeah,
speaking. I don't know if I want to call it spoken word or what I'm going to call it,
sure.
but
Absolutely.
I liked how you challenged people on so many different levels in like under 45 seconds.
Cool. I'm really happy to hear that was like potent. There is like a lot of cool old school youth crew albums that have a spoken word piece or like a poetry kind of piece or like an interlude reframe, and we kind of wanted to do something like that. The danger with making a type of music like this is that you set yourself up to say like, I am this like ideal like youth crew person that is infallible, and I'm like challenging you and standing on my like soapbox of judgment, and you need to do this and you need to do that. But really, Vibes is not about that at all. And so, just in case uh, that's how a person might just like brand it in their mind, we wanted to just take a step back and reframe and be like, no, actually, that's not what we're saying at all. And this use this message to kind of fuel your tank if that works for you. But we're not passing judgment or saying you got to be vegan or you got to be straight edge or you got to do this or you got to do that. That's not the message of Vibes at all. All of our members kind of have different belief systems, and we're not saying that one is correct or right, or it's all about what's right for that person. And not fitting in that does not preclude you from maybe enjoying or taking something away from the message. That's what we're hoping to get across. And so I it's gratifying to hear that that was received.
It was.
I'm loving the readings from the Bible here.
The Bible. That's
Yeah,
wonderful. I love
yeah.
it.
We got to, and then I hope with this album, we can take a little bit more time, like on Five social media, to clarify some of these messages, because in the hardcore art form, the way that it's set up, maybe some of that stuff gets missed, but it is meant for some thoughtful contemplation.
Yeah. Cool. So both the albums, Baseball Bat to the World's End and Aggressively Positive, are on your Spotify. And then also your demo from 2015, and then also a split album that you did with Penalty Box, who is another Posicore band.
I mean, definitely, I think their lyrics are fairly positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I got from them also.
Yeah,
I hadn't
very
checked them
cool.
out before. And you guys have a tape that you can get through Penalty Box of that, right?
Yep, yeah, that's out on Wide Eye Noise from Boston, and Double Lunch from Edmonton kind of put that out for us. Penalty Box is from Arizona, right? Flagstaff, Arizona, I believe.
Cool. Very
And
cool.
and I think they're broken up now, unfortunately, but they're a sick band.
Oh,
Our
well,
our American homies.
yeah. So altogether, the messages of not like harm reduction, not just in the sense of like drugs, but harm reduction in your life, positivity, and just different ways to deal with things. How, like, what changes specifically do you feel like vibes hits the nail on the head on? Like, when you think of vibes, what do you think you're aggressively going after?
Okay, so in the most true personal sense, what changed for me that brought me to being in vibes is I had completed this American or cross Canada tour, rather, sorry, with my previous band, uh, and the lyrical content of the hardcore bands that I had been in before starting vibes was fairly negative, you know. Still, a lot of it focusing on maybe the mental health themes, but in a way where it is the negative effects of that and how that affected my life negatively, and then also digging into that and really drawing like a lot of content from it and trying to find the ugliest way of kind of presenting that. And I did that because in a way that is like what a lot of hardcore and metal does. I thought that was a way to just sound badass, I guess, or I'm not too sure. But in effect, doing that tour, putting that message out there repeatedly had a self-fulfilling prophecy of like bringing extra negativity into my life and didn't benefit me in the way long term because I just repeated that mantra of self-destruction, and that's brought that into my life. Whereas a lot of my life, through my work in social work, through my work in community action, putting on shows, putting on the zine fair, putting on all this stuff, is to try to bring something positive into the world. And then during that time, it clicked into me. It's like, why would my artistic output try to bring something negative into the world? Like, really? And it got me thinking about the bands that I grew up listening to: 7 Seconds, Youth of Today, Was That Heroes. A lot of that stuff was positive. It was about changing your thinking, challenging yourself, and all of that. And then, but that was also rooted in straight edge. There was this weird thing that sort of like made positivity and living this specific lifestyle kind of hand in hand. And I thought, well, you could have a positive band that sort of has no specific allegiances in that way. And it's more just like challenging that negative thinking, challenging living a life where you let your mental health kind of make the decisions, where it's like, you know, I have such and such a diagnosis, so end of the story, you know. But not to say that that's not powerful and that's not a determining factor on a lot of things about our lives. But we got to fight for our mental health. We got to make the moves in our lives to make our outcomes as fulfilling for ourselves as possible. And I thought, okay, I need to get that across. That needs to be part of a message of the band that I start. And so Vibes really explicitly started so that I could say, okay, what's my ideal? Where is the high point that I'm trying to hang my hook on? And remember, Mattie, this is you at your best. This is what you're going for. This should be what you're living for. This should be your answer when you're having those down moments. And that should be the lyrics that you repeat. That should be the message that you try to implant in your brain and repeat every day at jam and make an album about, but then also get out into the world. And hopefully that message lands somewhere where that's going to have a positive impact on somebody. Mm-hmm. We're a band from Alberta. I'm not saying that it's going to go out and it's going to change people's lives. But it's what I'm putting my energy into, and I want to put my energy into something positive. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is, yeah, that's kind of what led me to start and continue to propagate Vibes. And I'm so thankful to the members of Vibes who can't be here today, because their excellent musicianship has given me like this platform to get that out. And that is such a righteous privilege. And I don't take that for granted for a second. I think like a lot of people would love to have the opportunity to rock the mic and say whatever's on their mind. And I have been gifted with that opportunity. So I'm thankful to them for that, them lending their time and energy to that quest, and like being my brothers in Posicore, you know? So it's a beautiful thing. I'm really, really, really sincerely grateful. And then also so gratified to speak with you, that to hear that the messages getting out there and been received is very, very nice. So sincerely, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, what you're saying, like when I was listening, like to a parting gift, I actually messaged my friend to say that like this is something we could listen to in the morning to start the day, and it would like put you in the right mindset. And so you really are achieving that. I do like it.
That's great. That's great. And then the new album, because I think it's a lot stronger musically. You know, I think that it hopefully gets out there and people hear it and really can listen to it regularly. I think aggressive positivity and stuff to me, because I'm a part of it. Like, I think I just listen to it and I think, oh, we could have done it so much better, you know? And this new one, I really feel like we really made it almost as good as we possibly could have. You know,
Okay.
we got, when we crossed the finish line, we had barely anything else in our tanks, you know? We gave it our all. So, you know, they
Yeah.
say even if you don't win, as long as you try your best. I really truly feel like we tried our best. So it's
Perfect.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the type of change that I hope Fives can contribute in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask also what you thought, or what positive change you thought was needed in the Alberta scene, but you kind of also answered that question. Like, I think a message that wasn't angry at situations, and a message
Yeah,
that wasn't necessarily toxically positive, but something that could get you through a situation, that like yelling yourself through it versus like
yeah,
walking yourself through it thought by thought is two different things.
yeah. You know, it's aggressive but still constructive. You know, but we're all a part. We're all a part of positive change in Alberta. You know, whether it's in like a small scale like the scene, which I can tell you from firsthand. Like, I grew up going to the punk scene, or growing up going to punk shows, and when you get into putting on shows, you can really have an effect on that community, you know, and not like I'm some big shot, but I've known generations of kids that have kind of come in and gone to shows. And I can say from what they've told me, like that experience was formative for them. That experience helped them get from that angst that they're at the time to go in and be involved in other facets of art and performance, or political action, or community organizing. And the people that inspired me to do that were also very regular people, you know? So in the grassroots way, you can have a positive effect. And then on a larger scale, you know, you are, if you're a young person, you are going to be the people that are in power. And society has changed a lot in the time that I've been alive. And it makes me think like the next 30 years, like we're going to see huge change, you know, and things that people never talked about before are regularly talked about now, you know, harm reduction, uh, uh, LGBTQ rights, transgender rights, especially, was something that you didn't hear about 20 years ago, you know, and now it's a major focus of a lot of conversation. And it really honestly gives me hope for where we might be in another 30 years or 20 years or even 10 years, you know?
Oh yeah, me too. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing the ass end of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and the next generations are going to stomp it out. And I'm excited to see where they're going.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been I wasn't sure. Maybe for the last couple of decades, but I think the kids now really seem like they got it. I think the young people coming up right now are the ones that are going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I have two more questions for you.
Yeah,
One is
absolutely.
so easy. Where can people find you? Facebook, Instagram, Bandcamp. I'm going to put all the links below.
Yeah, we're Vibes780 on everything except for Instagram. We're just regular vibes on Instagram. Yeah, no regular vibes on Bandcamp. That's what it is. We're just vibes.bandcamp.com. That's our flex, the one and only vibes. Vibes780 on everything else. And Baseball Back to the World's End is available on all platforms. So yeah, please scope it out. And if hardcore is not your thing, like we do, it's musically varied, and then it's got a good message, even if you're not into the kids.
Mm-hmm. And your final question is, what is your final message for the people?
Final message for the people is to be honest with yourself. I think that there's a lot of different forces in life that'll try to make you act a certain way or make you go in a certain direction. And even if it is in a lot of ways what seems like the right thing to do, I think that you've got to be honest with what's right about for you, and it can be kind of easy to get caught up in a momentum of things. And I think the more that you examine life, you'll see that a lot of things are inherently just artifacts of these larger structures that exist that may or may not actually even really exist. They're just sort of a thought construct that people have put out there. And you got to be careful about how much energy you put into that kind of stuff and be really, really critical about what you're being told, because there's a lot of conflicting agendas in the world. And I encourage you to be very watchful and skeptical and keep your minds sharp, because life is very, very challenging. And if you look like an easy mark, then people are going to take advantage of you. So I encourage you to be cautious and aware, but also take the time and invest in yourselves, because certainly nobody else is going to do it if you don't. You can't wait for someone to come along and enrich your life. You've got to take those opportunities for change and challenge and growth and healing and learning where they come, because those are the things that make life truly rich. So I think that in a really selfish way, you should really go after your chances for growth and healing and being the best person you can possibly be, and never stop believing in hardcore, because it's at the end of the day, it's one of the realest things that we got.
It's true. It's true. That was perfect. I loved it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's such a privilege. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate the time of everybody that took to listen to this. It's a real privilege to have this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to all your music, reading all your lyrics, and I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much. Cut.
Yeah, take care.